All right, let's start assembling our lazy loading slider. So remember, the code is in the Slick Slider minimum code text file, which I have right over here to the side. So I'm just going to do some copy pasting to speed the process up. I'm going to go ahead and move my root level folder out of the way. And I'll just point out one more time, when you download the Slick Slider demo, make sure you copy the Slick folder and paste the folder into the root level folder for your project. If you do so, everything will be fine. All the links should work perfectly with the code provided. All right, let me move this out of the way. And again, I'm just going to point out that this demo is focusing on the lazy loading slider. And one difference here is you'll notice on the image element, we're using, or I should say Ken is using the data lazy attribute instead of the source attribute, the typical image source equals. So in this case, it's image data lazy equals, and then the path, whether relative or absolute, wherever you're linking to files, this will be the path to your image. And then I'll just point out here, HTML5, we don't need the / at the end anymore. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin adding the code one step at a time to our HTML page. And again, this demo is specific to using Slick Slider in a HTML editor which is on your local computer. Okay, there will be a separate demo for adding the Slick Slider to a Codepen Pen project. That'll be later. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is let's just go ahead and add a couple of comments. So right here after the title, I'm basically going to just have a comment with, which is a reminder to make sure you have your Slick folder in the root level. And then we're going to now add the link to the Slick CSS and the Slick theme CSS. So we'll have this come in next. I'm going to go ahead and add a space just for now, just a little visual separation for now. Okay, and you'll see that we are linking to that Slick folder, and then inside the Slick folder we should see Slick CSS, and then inside the Slick folder, Slick theme. So I'll just point out here that if we open up our folder, here are the files. Now there's lots of different files inside here depending on what it is you're doing, but we need these two. Okay, Slick CSS and Slick theme JS. All right, let's go ahead and move this back out of the way. Now I already have some CSS styles in here. We basically just have a little mini reset, and then I have a footer just with a crediting MAX GRUNDY for allowing me to use his images. Okay, so let's go ahead and first what we'll do is let's add a style, or better yet, let's start off with our HTML first. Okay, so what we'll start off with here, let me find the right ones. And let's go ahead and scroll down. And after the body opens, we'll go ahead and paste in. Again, I'm going to make sure I have comments pointing out what we're talking about, and giving proper credit to content that's being used. Okay, so you'll notice we start off here with the div, this div. Let's go ahead and end our div before I forget to. Okay, and you're going to see that this div has a class will scale the slider. So let's go ahead and get that rule real quick. And let's go ahead and place this right after our universal selector here. And what I want to point out is you need to create an element. You can position and scale that element however you want. This is the element you're going to use to hold the slider. So whatever width you set this to, that's the width the slider is going to be. Okay. Now I have a border on this, which is blue, because I want you to be able to see what's what is holding what. You can remove the border when you implement the slider into your own project. It's just here to create the visual. Okay. All right. So if we go ahead and save, we should see what is our element. Okay, now there's nothing inside, so it's collapsed on itself. No big deal. As soon as we add the slider, everything will be fine. All right, let's go ahead and go back to our editor. And this time, let's get the rest of our HTML. So let me find the element, which is, here it is. We're going to have our section with our divs inside of our section. So let's go ahead and copy. And we're going to scroll down. And let's go ahead and paste in. I'm just going to use a section. And what's going on here, and I guess we could have just used this div and not this section inside. But what I'm doing is I'm using this section. And this is where we are adding the class lazy and the class slider. All right. So lazy, this is the class which is going to hook to our JavaScript function within our statements. And then slider, this is the CSS rule which we will use, which creates the slider itself. Okay. Now inside the section, we're just using divs. So any content which you want to be a slide will go inside of a div. And then in this case, we're loading an image element. And again, just to point out, for our attribute, we're using data lazy, okay, because we're using specifically the data lazy slider. Okay. And then we have the path to our image. So this example has 5 images inside. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and deal with the rest of our CSS rules. And I'm just going to grab those real quick here. And I just want to make sure I have all the right ones. Sorry for the pause there. Okay, so after our class will scale the slider. Now remember, this is the one which is the outer div, the parent. This is the one which sets the position and the overall width of our slider. And let's go ahead and paste in. This next element is the section. Basically, we're just going to set the position to relative, the width and height to auto, and I'm placing a border, this time red. So again, you'll be able to see what's what, where things are. You can delete the borders, again, when you implement the slider into your project. Now, the next rule, this is the slider. This is that class that I just spoke about down in the HTML, that second class, okay? And the first one was lazy, I believe. So the first class communicates with the JavaScript function. The second class is this slider. Okay, this is the shell of your slider. Now you have your slick slide, and this is going to create the space around each of the slides if you want space. So right now we're just going to have 20 pixels on the right and the left-hand side, none on the top and the bottom. The next scales the image in each slide. I'm going to go ahead and set the width to 100%. And the next rule, this is the slick previous button or arrow and the slick next button or arrow. And we're in HTML5, 5, CSS 3, so probably wouldn't hurt to update to the double : sudo. Okay, I have it as it was from the download from Ken Wheeler. Okay, so we can go ahead and update this if you want, or you can leave it in the CSS2 format. All right, so what's important here is this will create the arrows that will allow you to navigate to the next slide or the previous slide. And right now, this is red. So you can change the color of those arrows. Okay. Now we have the transition, and you can adjust the transition, the opacity of the transition slide. We have the active slide, and then we have our current slide. Okay. All right. So now we have everything set up except for our JavaScript. So let's go and grab our JavaScript from our Slick Slider minimum code text file. And for this to work correctly, this particular script needs to go after all of your other HTML elements and right before the closing body tag. So let's go ahead and paste. And we're going to see that we have a script, which is our JavaScript, which will go to our jQuery library. And then we have another script. This is looking for that Slick inside that Slick folder in our root folder, getting at another Slick JavaScript file. And then we have the actual script, which calls the function to create our slider. Okay, so basically, here's that class .lazy, which is the first class inside of our section. And then we have our lazy load on demand. Okay, and then we start to have these different settings. So in this case, infinite means it's just going to be a continuous loop. Right now the slideshow is set to only one slide, and the slideshow will scroll one slide. The dots, these will be the pagination dots underneath the slider, and then the arrows. These are the arrows for our next and our previous button. So let's go ahead and save, and let's take a look at what we have. So here is our slider, and again, the red is letting us know where our section is, and then the blue, this is the element which is holding this is the parent div that is holding the slider. And then we should be able to cycle through. All right. And we should be able to use the pagination. All right, let's go back real quick here, and let's just point out that if you wanted, number one, let's just go up here to the top, and let's say that we want our slider to be, instead of 400, let's set this to 700. Okay, and we'll save, and you'll see that your slider is larger. Now let's go back and let's experiment a little bit with our function. So let's say we want to show 3 slides, and the slides to scroll we'll keep at 1. Okay, and we'll save, and now you have 3, and you only scroll 1 slide at a time. If we were to change, let's make this 4, and we'll do slides to scroll 2, and we'll save. We now have 4 slides, and we'll slide 2 at a time. Okay. All right. So setting up your slick lazy slider inside of your project using an HTML editor.